The Accord fleet arrived above Earth on a grey Tuesday morning, 11 warships blotting out the sky over the Pacific like a held breath. Ambassador Holt stood on the observation deck of Geneva Station, watching the feed with his hands folded behind his back. He was 58 years old, silver at the temples, and he had spent the last 6 years of his life arguing with beings who considered humanity a rounding error in the galaxy's ledger. "They're not here to talk, Elena," he said. Elena Brooks, head of Earth's diplomatic bureau, didn't look up from her tablet. "They're always here to talk, right up until they're not." The Treaty of Threshold had been clear when the Accord first found humanity 9 years ago. Emerging species were forbidden from constructing warships, not discouraged, forbidden. The Accord called it a mercy. Young civilizations building weapons of war before they understood the weight of them had ended in extinction more times than the Accord cared to count. Humanity had signed. Humanity had smiled. Humanity has said, "Of course we understand." And then, in shipyards buried under mountains in Nevada, in flooded caverns off the coast of Maine, in orbital scaffolding disguised as a Mars supply relay, humanity had built anyway. Colonel Grace Whitfield had commanded the Resolute for 3 years before anyone outside a 9-person oversight committee knew the ship existed. She was 41, a former Navy submariner, who'd spent a decade learning how to make a 100,000-ton object disappear from every sensor humanity understood, and then had spent 5 more years learning how to disappear from sensors humanity didn't. "Talk to me, petty officer," she said now, standing on the Resolute's dim bridge, lit only by the blue wash of tactical displays. Petty Officer Daniel Reyes didn't look away from his console. 11 Accord cruisers holding position at geosynchronous. Weapons are hot. They're broadcasting an ultimatum on all frequencies. Full disclosure of, quote, unauthorized military assets within 1 hour, or they treat Earth as a hostile actor in violation of the Threshold Accord. "They found out," said Whitfield's XO. "A broad-shouldered man named Owen Kessler. They found out," Whitfield agreed. "The question is how much." She'd known this day would come. Everyone in the program had known. You didn't build 4 warships in secret and expect the galaxy to stay ignorant forever. Not when the Accord had eyes in half your solar system's asteroid belt. The only real question had ever been when and whether Earth would be ready. In Geneva, Ambassador Holt requested a private channel with the Accord flagship. The being who answered was called Administrator Thessalon, a Vantari diplomat with skin like brushed pewter and eyes that never seemed to blink. "Ambassador," she said, "you signed the Threshold Accord." "We did. You built warships anyway." Holt didn't flinch. "We built ships, Administrator. You never once asked us not to build ships. You told us not to build weapons of war. We built things that could survive a war we didn't start." "Semantics will not save your species." "No," Holt agreed quietly. "But I suspect they'll help, Administrator, before you make a decision you can't undo. I'd like you to look at something." He nodded to Elena, who transmitted a single burst of data. Thessalon's pewter face went very still. What she was looking at was not a weapons manifest. It was a casualty report, one the Accord itself had filed 11 years earlier, before humanity had ever been formally contacted. The Kelvash Drift, a peaceful Accord survey convoy of 6 unarmed vessels, was annihilated without warning by a rogue faction called the Ashkar Remnant. Every soul aboard. The Accord had mourned them, built a memorial, and moved on, because the Accord's own Threshold Accord forbade its own signatory worlds from maintaining standing war fleets in peacetime. Mercy again, the same mercy now aimed at Earth's throat. "You think we don't know history," Holt said. "We do. We know the Ashkar Remnant is still out there. We know your treaty leaves every young signatory world defenseless against them, because you decided the danger of a species learning to fight was worse than the danger of a species that couldn't. We disagreed. Quietly. We built ships that could shield refugee convoys, that could stand between the remnant and a colony that couldn't defend itself. We never built anything designed to strike first. Ask your own censors, Administrator. Not one of our 4 ships carries an offensive payload larger than what your own border patrol authorizes for anti-piracy work." Thessalon was silent for a long moment. 4 ships, she finally said. "Against 11 of ours." 4 ships, Holt agreed, "that have spent 3 years training in the dark, unseen, untracked, by a species you have consistently underestimated since the day you found us. Aboard the Resolute, Whitfield watched the clock tick down on the Accord's ultimatum. 40 minutes. 30. Colonel, Reyes said, voice tight. Accord cruisers Vashon and Ithral Corps are breaking formation, moving to flanking positions over the Atlantic and the Pacific. They're posturing, Kessler said. They're not posturing, Whitfield said slowly, watching the pattern resolve on the tactical display. That's a containment formation. They're not planning to negotiate at all. This ultimatum was never real. She thought of the training runs. 3 years of running silent through the outer belt. 3 years of her crew, engineers, pilots, kids barely out of flight school, learning to fight in the black with nothing but each other, and machines nobody back home was supposed to know existed. She thought of what Holt had told her before she'd shipped out. We are not building this to start a war. We're building it so nobody can end us before we've had the chance to prove we don't need to. Bring the resolute, the freedom, the vigilant, and the cold harbour to the firing position, she said. Do not fire. I say again, do not fire first. But when they see us decloak in formation around this planet, I want it to be the last surprise they ever get to plan for us. 4 ships bloomed into visibility around Earth, like a held breath finally released, not hidden in shadow anymore, but standing openly in the light, engines burning steady, weapons cold and silent and utterly, deliberately unfired. On the Accord flagship, alarms screamed through corridors that had never once. In 9 years of watching humanity, registered ships this size, this close, undetected until the moment they chose to be seen. Thessalon stared at the display, then at Holt's steady face on her screen. You could have fired, she said. You had a position. You were surprised. We could have, Holt said. We didn't. That was never the point, Administrator. The point was that you'd know we could and choose not to. That's the difference between a species you should fear and one you should trust. We're asking you to notice which one we just proved we are. The silence on the channel stretched long enough that Elena, Brooks stopped breathing. Then Thessalon gave the order to stand her fleet down. It would be months before the full treaty amendments were signed, before humanity's right to defensive fleets was written permanently into Accord law, cited by 4 other young species within the decade. But on that grey Tuesday, what the history books would remember was simpler. 11 warships had come to punish a species for disobedience, and found instead 4 ships that chose restraint when they didn't have to. They said humanity couldn't build warships. Humanity built something better. Proof that strength, held steady and unused, could win wars that weapons never would.